Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior draft analyst, Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on today, man? How you doing? What do you think of the game coming up on Sunday?
I'm really excited for the game that's coming up. I'm so glad that the regular season's finally here and upon us. Getting through the preseason was a little bit rough, especially with the Broncos having that Hall of Fame game. But we made it. We're there, and it's game time.
Yeah, man, I'm just super excited for the regular season to finally get underway after what has seemingly been forever since we had real NFL football on our television screens. So it's going to be a lot of fun seeing this Broncos team kick off against the Oakland Raiders, a hated rival, the most featured Monday Night Football matchup in NFL history. So Broncos country has a lot to look forward to going into 2019. But today on Dove Valley Deep Divers, we're going to go deep into the offensive and defensive schemes that the Broncos are going to be employing under new head coach Vic Fangio, as well as his defensive coordinator Ed Donatel and offensive coordinator Rich Scangarello, the new offensive coordinator coming out of the San Francisco 49ers organization. We're also going to take a look at blocking schemes from the offense, what kind of routes and packages we're going to see as far as offensive personnel goes, the defensive personnel, how the scheme is actually going to break down the intricacies of everything involved, as well as some players to really highlight and how they can make an impact within especially the defense. We're also going to have a quick look at the Oakland Raiders game, a couple player versus player matchups to take a look at, and our score predictions. So guys, without any further ado, let's get started.
Fantasy football season is here, and this season there are more ways to win than ever because FanDuel has more ways to win cash prizes and once-in-a-lifetime experiences during every single game, every single week. If you never played FanDuel Fantasy Football before, that's great because new users get $20 insight credit if they deposit $20. Each and every year, fantasy football helps hardcore fans like us and even the casual fans to get that much more passionate and involved in the NFL regular season. But don't get stuck in a lineup that you're going to regret. With FanDuel, you can pick a new team each and every week. FanDuel is way more flexible with your options, and the injuries and busts, guess what? They don't end your season. Plus, you get the chance to win millions of dollars. Sign up for FanDuel now and get $20 in total bonus. Just make your first deposit of $20 to get started, and you'll get an extra $5 in site credit every week for 4 weeks. Go to FanDuel.com/DFSFantasy. That's FanDuel.com/DFSFantasy, or download the FanDuel app.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
As far as the offense for the Denver Broncos is concerned, Rich Scangarello coming into this season as the new offensive coordinator, we really don't have any kind of a big idea of what we're going to be taking a look at. So, Erick, I'm going to let you start breaking down the blocking scheme up front from the offensive line. What do you think that Rich Scangarello is going to deploy out there for us?
Well, as we know, that it's going to be a zone scheme. That's one reason why they brought Mike Munchak in. He's one of the guys that's in the NFL that's most adept at coaching the zone scheme for offensive linemen around. So that was a big get for them. They knew that they wanted to go back to the system. It's one of the reasons why they were flirting with making Gary Kubiak a part of the offensive coaching staff, kind of like a consultant. But for other reasons, they decided not to go to do that. So what we're going to be seeing is we're going to be seeing a lot of stretch runs. We're going to be trying to get these running backs to the outside. We're going to be pulling offensive linemen, the guards, tackles, or whatever to get out in front of them and clear the way for them. With Phillip Lindsay's speed, that's going to be something that's going to be really beneficial for the Broncos offense. And it'll help set up some nice play action rollouts and a bunch of other stuff that we're going to be seeing with this offense as well. It is a little bit more athletically demanding for the offensive linemen, especially on the interior, which it's going to be interesting seeing how Ron Leary is going to be doing in this scheme. He's a guy who the athleticism doesn't really blow you away. He's just kind of a phone booth gap power kind of guy. He moves okay, but my expectation is that when we see them running these stretches, when we see them pulling these offensive linemen, it's not going to be so much Ron Leary. We're going to be seeing a little bit more of like Connor McGovern, Dalton Reisner, and Garrett Bowles. We're going to see more of them kind of pulling out and getting in front and being those lead blockers. And also with this is that the zone scheme is that it's going to be being used to set up, as I hinted at or mentioned, moving the pocket, setting up those rollouts for Joe Flacco, basically to help cover the Broncos' offensive woes with pass blocking, any team, you want to move the pocket a little bit for them. That's pretty basic stuff there. And Joe Flacco, back when he had Gary Kubiak as his offensive coordinator, I think it was back in 2014, he actually looked really good when they would do these, when they would have those rollouts, those bootlegs, and all that jazz. So that's what we're going to be getting in terms of blocking scheme. Running a zone, they're not going to have their one guy that they're assigned to. They're going to be assigned to a certain area. Whichever defender comes to that area, that's going to be the guy they're taking out. We're going to see a lot more attempts at cut blocks, trying to chop the defender's legs out from underneath them, basically, to help free them up. And a lot is going to fall on these offensive linemen. I mean, as I said, you got to have some athletes. They have some pretty good ones. But can they hold up? Can they move quick enough? Can they get out there in front? And can they basically take care of the guys that are coming in front of them, crossing their paths, without just letting them blow by them like we saw multiple times in the preseason? Plus, it's also going to help with Royce Freeman running the interior a little bit between the tackles. Nice little interior zone schemes. That's going to be beneficial as well. Having them basically double team the big run defender, the nose tackle, out of the way, and leaving the under tackle to trying to get basically taken out one by one, and using the fullback or the pulling guard or someone else to come in and clear the way with the linebackers. And that's how we're going to basically see a lot of Royce Freeman being utilized, and maybe Devontae Booker as well. So it's, again, that zone scheme, athletic guys, they've got the pieces for the most part that can work inside this scheme. They just have to go out there and execute.
Right, and it sounds to me like it's obviously going to be a lot of the Mike Shanahan now turned into the Kyle Shanahan, that old West Coast offense with running big zone stretch plays and the play action passing game coming out on the bootleg. But it's a lot more than that. And Eric, you kind of brought up a really cool point from somebody you were talking to inside of Dove Valley the other day about it's the old school Shanahan system with 22 and 21 personnel. That means 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, or 2 running backs, 1 tight end based on that. Or you see a lot of 12 personnel as well with 1 running back and 2 tight ends. Very tight end centric offense. But this is not going to be the same exact case. If you look back to the 2016 Wagner Seahawks, where Rich Scangarello was the offensive coordinator for that team that year, there was a lot more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets that you were going to be seeing on any given basis. They would often really use a lot of spread concepts to get the defense really spread out and get a lot of open areas for the quarterback to attack using the middle of the field and deep in the passing game. It's going to be very aggressive as far as the downfield aspect goes. The Broncos are really going to try to push the ball down the field, and especially having Joe Flacco in the fold with a big arm being able to move around and get the ball pushed down the field. That's something that the Broncos are going to use very, very much this year. Rich Scangarello actually learned a lot from Kyle Shanahan, and he said, quote, one thing that I would truly appreciate beyond anything with Coach Shanahan is that he's always trying to score on every single play that he calls. I never thought that way as a play caller in the passing game. Sometimes I was thinking more about staying on schedule. He was always thinking, how can we attack the defense and create explosive plays? It really changed my mindset for the better. And if you did watch that Wagner Seahawks team, I watched as many highlight films as I could, as much game tape as I could. And the one thing that really stuck out to me was how vertically aggressive this offense is. A lot of very big 9 routes, that go route, a lot of post routes, a lot of corner routes. 3 and 4 wide receivers crossing each other's faces, getting down the field vertically, and then bringing that deep over route, that deep crossing route underneath on the back side of that as everybody else vacates in the deeper zones to try to pick apart that medium passing area. Using the play action was another big thing for this Wagner offense as well. A lot of read option plays were incorporated into this offense, where obviously, with Joe Flacco, you're probably not going to see that because Flacco doesn't necessarily have the big mobility. But at Wagner, Scangarello had a quarterback that was big, tall, big-armed, and very mobile. He used to use that read option to set up the play-action passing game for him very, very well, including run-pass options as well. So you're going to see a lot of that read option handoff action there probably not going to see Flacco run around a lot. But then on the back side of that, you'll see a lot of jet sweep motions and a lot of reverse motions. We've already seen that a couple times with Tim Patrick and Emmanuel Sanders against the Los Angeles Rams. So they use that kind of motion, these big offensive trickeration plays where they get a lot of people moving in different directions, and then they build their play action passing game off of that to take big chunk yardage down the field.
Yeah, that's something that I'm really excited for, is this style offense, this modernized Shanahan offense, and getting those shots. And John Elway said back in January of this year that taking shots downfield, they wanted to be aggressive. They wanted to take those shots. And Scangarello, in his time at Wagner, he showed that was kind of what he wanted to do. And then you brought up that quote about what he learned from Kyle Shanahan and always wanting to score and trying to draw up plays that will always that gives them that opportunity. That's something this Broncos offense desperately needs, especially after the last 2 years. And that was a big reason why they went and got Joe Flacco, and why Joe Flacco is such an upgrade over Case Keenum. Their stats may be similar, but there is a huge difference for a team when the opposing defense has to prepare to cover all 3 levels of the field compared to 1/3 of the field. There's a huge difference in that, and that is going to just definitely open things up. And one thing that I'm really hoping to see, it's something that we see with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, is they don't fall into this old school line of thought that you have to be able to run to set up the play action. There's plenty of analytics out there that show that you don't. You can run play action if you have zero run game at all and still be effective. And the Broncos, hopefully with Rick Scangarello, they're able to see that. They have the analytics in front of them, and they do that. You don't have to do it. Run the play action even if your run game's not going, because nowadays, so many linebackers, even top-tier linebackers, I went back and watched some Chicago Bears tape for when we talk about the defense a little bit, and Roquan Smith, granted he was a rookie, he was constantly biting on play actions. Danny Trevathan was biting on play actions. When I watch over the Seattle Seahawks tape from last year, Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly, all these big-time linebackers in the NFL would bite on play actions. But not just the linebackers, safeties as well. So it definitely opens up things. And if you can get just that 1 second of that linebacker coming up on the play action, and that gives your tight end just enough room to hit him, then it's working. And it works so much, and that's one thing that this offense is going to be doing, is using the play action, not to just set up the pass, but to set up the run as well.
Yeah, exactly. And using the play action you can actually use a play action to set up the run as well, because teams are going to stop biting up. They're going to sit back expecting that play action, which is going to open up everything in front of them. It may not create a whole bunch of big running lanes, but it does open up some more holes in the running games by keeping the linebackers back on their heels just a little bit, expecting that dump-off pass to, say, somebody like Noah Fant right over the top of their head in between the safety and linebacker depth right in there, you know? So being able to utilize the heavy play action schemes that Scangarello likes to use, and there was a lot of it that I saw at Wagner, a whole lot of play action passing game schemes that he would incorporate on a weekly basis. So being able to do that is going to help hopefully open up this offense even more. Now, there's one quick other thing that I wanted to get at before we moved on, and that was the creativity in play design that we're going to see with Scangarello as well. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of 3 and 4 wide receiver spread option kind of setups, but there's one specific one that I saw a couple of different times at Wagner with Scangarello, and it was a two wide receivers on either side of the line of scrimmage, but they weren't staggered. They were literally lined up, one on the line of scrimmage and one guy at like a yard right behind him. And they would run some slant combination routes out of that, some post combinations, quick hitters to the outside using the wide receiver in the front as a blocker. Like, there's a lot of nifty play designs that can come out of these really cool play formations that Scangarello is trying to incorporate within his offense as well. So, I don't know. This is going to be a fairly fun offense to watch if the offensive line can get the running game going and protect Joe Flacco, get some of the deep passing game that Scangarello really likes to use as well. So, maybe this year the Broncos might actually have an offense capable of being in the top 15 again this year. That'd be pretty nice to see, I think. So, we still have the defensive side of the football to go over, and we will do that just after a quick break, but before we go, I just want to remind you all to head on over to milehighhuddle.com to check out all of our written content on your Denver Broncos. At the Huddle website, you'll get breaking news, analysis, and opinion articles, as well as in-depth film breakdowns of not only Broncos players, but matchups to watch in an upcoming game, or even our top-notch NFL draft coverage. Also, make sure you take a couple of minutes to create your own personalized profile and hit up the comment section to voice your opinions on any topics that you agree or disagree with. It's completely free, easy to use, and we all love to discuss Broncos football with our readers. You can also sit in with us during the live game thread to talk your thoughts on how the team is performing as well. So with that, we got to step away really quick. We'll be right back. Sit tight.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Welcome back, Broncos country. Here on Dove Valley Deep Divers, we're taking a look at the offensive and defensive schemes that are coming into the season with new head coach Vic Fangio, new offensive coordinator Rich Scangarello, and now new defensive coordinator Ed Donatel. It's a very intricate and detailed defensive scheme. Eric, take it away. Let's see what we got, man.
So one thing that stands out about Vic Fangio's defense is that you can't really label it. It's not a 3-4. It's not a 4-3. I mean, typically in your base, what you'll be looking at is a 4-3 under, but he does so many hybrid fronts that you can't just call it a 4-3 under. This is a multi-front defense that he runs. I mean, the coverage stuff is also a hybrid. Like, it's just a whole completely hybrid defense. He takes pieces out of 4-3 zones, 4-3 mans, Tampa 2, all this stuff, like cover 3. It's all just mashed into one defense, and he varies it by what he's going to use more to each opponent. And not only that, but looking at the defensive front specifically, is we're going to be seeing a pretty standard 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. You're going to be having Von Miller as your Sam. You're going to be having Bradley Chubb as on the weak side. And that's going to be pretty standard with Gotsis, Harris, and Wolf on your defensive line. Those are going to be your 3 down linemen. Pretty typically. I mean, there's going to be obviously some situations, but I'll get into here now. And what they're going to be doing is that they're going to be basically, depending on the opponent, the down, the distance, all that stuff like that, for the most part, we're going to be seeing them attacking just a single gap. Now, what that means is with Shelby Harris, who's going to be your zero tech, your nose tackle, is he's going to be lined up pretty much on the center, maybe as the one tech just off the center's shoulder. Now, what he's going to be doing is he's going to be watching both A gaps, if it's a 2-gap scheme. Which means it's either going to be the gap between the center and the left guard or the center and the right guard. That's typically what it's going to be doing when we 2-gap, but you're not going to see Denver 2-gap too often, and if we do, it's probably not going to be Shelby Harris out there. Instead, what he's going to be doing is he's just going to be having his one gap, and he's going to shoot it. He's going to shoot that gap and try to blow up the play behind the line of scrimmage, if it's a run play, or if it's a pass play, try to get a pressure on the quarterback. Now, to help cover for that, this adds a lot of pressure onto the linebackers. This is one reason why linebackers are so important in Vic Fangio's defense, is because a lot falls on them to be able to handle, to be able to take on blocks and shed blocks in the other gap. Because you have multiple gaps along that offensive lineman. I mean, you have each side of the center, then you have between the left guard and the left tackle, then you have outside the left tackle, and same side just substituted for the right. With only 3 down linemen, that's going to be putting a lot of pressure on Josie Jewell, Todd Davis, Alexander Johnson, Keyshawn Barrera, whoever happens to be there, Corey Nelson, doesn't matter. It's going to be putting a lot of pressure on them. They have to be able to step up and do their job. That's one reason why myself, my colleague Nick Kendall, and multiple others at milehighhuddle.com have been advocating for a linebacker for so long. But also, to help out with that and help take that pressure off of it, is that you have those options of being able to 2-gap. Shelby Harris, he's not the best when 2-gapping, but he's capable of doing it. You have Derek Wolfe, who he is one of the better run defenders in the NFL, and doesn't matter if he's 1-gapping or 2-gapping. He still does his job really freaking well. You have Adam Gotsis on the other side, who's kind of the same thing. He's not as good of a run defender as Derek Wolfe is, but he's more than adequate, and he can 1-gap or 2-gap, but he's a little bit better as a 1-gapper as well. So we're going to be seeing these guys, and they're going to be shooting the gaps, trying to blow up the play, which is going to benefit just the whole defense as a whole, because typically when 2 gaps is you're not just full-on attacking. You're kind of sitting back and kind of letting the play come to you a little bit. If you manage to be able to shed your block and get up the hole and blow up the play, excellent. But typically it's just kind of sitting back and just kind of waiting. when you're one gapping, your whole goal is attack, attack, attack. It is a very aggressive defensive scheme. It is a very aggressive defensive front base that you have there. With Vic Fangio, one thing he does is he adapts his scheme to fit his players. Now, if Denver didn't have the pieces, if maybe they still had Domata Peko as their nose tackle, then we'd probably see a little bit more two-gapping because that better fits Peko's game. But Shelby Harris, it isn't, as I was talking about, which is why we're going to see more of that. I mean, if Mike Purcell comes in, we'll be seeing a little bit more two-gapping. He's got a little bit more of that anchor to sit there and hold his spot and cover both gaps. But the hybrid fronts is just, it's going to be so much fun to watch because every single defensive play, there's going to be something different about it. I mean, not just with the basic play call. Not talking about just that. Not talking about the second. I'm just talking about with the offensive line. Every single play, a gap assignment's going to be different, and just it's going to be go from one gap, two gap, where they line up a little bit. And I'm just excited for this multiple front. We're going to be seeing 2 down linemen. We're going to be seeing 3. We're going to see 4. In short yardage situations, we'll have maybe 5 or 6 of them out there, and that's not even including Von Miller and Chubb. They're going to be definitely very aggressive up front in the trenches, which is, in my opinion, where games can be won and lost at.
Absolutely. And adding in Harris and Chubb and Miller into the fold on that as coming off of the edge there. Look at what happened with Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd last year in Chicago under Vic Fangio as well. And even before then, we had Justin Smith in San Francisco, and when he also had Aldon Smith coming off of the edge as well. So the outside linebackers, the pass rushers in Vic Fangio's schemes always eat. They always get their own, and a lot of it is based off of those knifing interior defenders, that one gap scheme on the inside where they're pulling a guard in there with it, getting some one-on-one matchups along the exterior with the pass rushers. And I mean, you can debate Von Miller versus Khalil Mack all day, and no one's really going to come away with a right answer unless you're a Broncos fan and say that Khalil Mack is better than Von Miller. Then you're wrong. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you are wrong, sir. And then as far as Bradley Chubb is concerned and Leonard Floyd, to me, they're a staunch difference in the way that they play. Bradley Chubb is a lot more power, and to me, Leonard Floyd is the more speed and finesse type player. We watched the Bears and the Packers on Thursday Night Football, and we got to see some speed to power conversion from Leonard Floyd coming off the edge. He made David Bakhtiari, the Green Bay Packers left tackle, he made David Bakhtiari look absolutely awful. Put him on skates, got him right into Aaron Rodgers' huge sack to end the drive right there. But that is something you're going to see a lot more prevalent with Bradley Chubb, who is bigger, faster, and stronger than Leonard Floyd. So getting after the passer is obviously a huge deal for the Vic Fangio defense because it makes his secondaries look a lot better than they could be as well. It does help out with getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly. And in the zone coverage schemes that Fangio has, they set up very well for high interception numbers from guys on the outside. We're finally going to see Chris Harris Jr. not only get maybe 1 or 2 interceptions in a season, he might get 5 or 6 or 7, Last year, you look at the Chicago Bears defense, and they had 3 players in the top 18 in the NFL in interceptions, with Kyle Fuller, who led the NFL with 6. Eddie Jackson had, 4 or 5. Prince Amukamara had 3. All 3 of them in the top 20 in interceptions. His first year back in San Francisco, I believe in 2011, he had Carlos Rogers and Deshaun Goldson, another cornerback safety duo. Both had 6 interceptions. Both were in the top 4 in interceptions in the NFL that year. So getting after the passer really opens up missed errant throws for the defense to come down with, and we saw an example of that this year with Bradley Chubb and one Isaac Yiadom out on the outside against the Los Angeles Rams. Or, excuse me, it was the San Francisco 49ers. I do apologize for that. Chubb came up, heavy pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo in the pocket, forces an errant throw early in the down, and Isaac Yiadom got his eyes on it, made a nice catch, secured the interception on the 49ers opening drive. So Fangio's defense, along with the interior knifing players and the exotic schemes back behind it where you don't see a lot of blitzing. You see a lot of people, chess pieces moving around. It doesn't actually come as a blitz. A lot of times he's only rushing 4, but it does look like he's sending a cornerback. But really what he's doing is he's pulling an off-ball linebacker back into coverage, or say Von Miller or Bradley Chubb. They're pulling off into coverage and just getting replaced by a cornerback coming in as it looks like a blitz, but it's really not. So very exotic, very detailed. It's going to be a really cool defense to watch, especially with the players that the Broncos have in their defensive roster.
Yeah, and talk about this and how difficult Vic Fangio is to game plan for. Kyle Shanahan, McVay, and I can't remember who the other one was, came out and were asked about who's the toughest defensive coordinator, and they all said Vic Fangio. And Carl Dummler of Mile High Huddle and the host of the Building the Broncos podcast, he actually has an article up at milehighhuddle.com that goes over that and their comments about what they made. And it's definitely a must read because it really does a good job of just showing with their comments about how tough Vic Fangio is to prepare. And part of that is that hybrid defense, that those multiple different schemes that he just pulls pieces from in. And with the pass rushers, I absolutely love the fact that we're going to be seeing Von Miller play that Leonard Floyd type role, and Bradley Chubb's getting the Khalil Mack type role in this defense. I actually really love that. I know a lot of people want to sit there and throw Von Miller and Bradley Chubb in the same conversation as pass rushers, which they are. They're the same tier. I don't care. They're both great. Like, there's no doubt about that. And I just got to throw this out there while I'm talking about it. If you want to use their stats last year, their 2018 season, to show that Von Miller's better, just stop. Because Khalil Mack missed multiple games, and he still put up numbers very similar to Von Miller. Both are great. Both are elite pass rushers, and both are tremendous players to have on your defensive front. But their play styles are a little bit different. Von Miller, he really utilizes that speed to power conversion to really jack the offensive linemen off balance and put them on their heels. Not saying he's not strong enough to just get underneath them and just drive them back. He has plenty of strength, but he likes to be more of that finesse type rusher. And Bradley Chubb he's kind of the opposite of Von Miller. He can be the kind of that finesse rusher, but he likes to basically use that power and just get them on their heels and drive them back. Now, one thing that we're going to see a lot is defense a lot, and it's something that basically with a type of pass rusher like that you have in Von Miller alone, you do a lot, but with having Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, you're definitely going to use this, especially with Shelby Harris on the inside, and that's stunts or twists or whatever you want to call them. They're all the same thing. It's basically taking your edge rusher, pulling them up behind your defensive lineman and attacking the inside, while your defensive lineman kind of pushes outside to try to get the attention of the guard and the tackle, and freeing up the edge rusher to come inside. That's basically what it is. Now, Vic Fangio's defenses, going back to when he was with the San Francisco 49ers, were always in the top 5 for their pressure rates off the stunts, according to Pro Football Focus. Most of those years, I think all but like maybe 2 or 3 of them, they were in the top 3. He gets a lot of pressure off of stunts because he knows how to disguise them, and he knows how to set them up with other moves, because playing defense is very much a chess match. And we've heard Von Miller talk about this, that you kind of do the same thing over and over again to set up one move that you're only going to use once or twice. Von Miller does this all the time. We saw Malik Reed do this multiple times in the preseason with his sacks, which I have either a film piece out or a film piece coming out. I'm not sure at the time of recording this if it'll be out by the time this is out or not. But we have a piece about that coming out where I talk about how he was setting up, basically rushing the outside hard and setting it up, and then finally we see him plant his foot, use his leverage, get underneath the offensive tackle, cut inside, and get the sack. So we're going to be seeing all this stuff combined to set up these stunts and these other pressures from all these pass rushes that Broncos have, because we always talk about the edges, but Shelby Harris is a very capable interior offensive lineman, and I'll talk more about him specifically and his ability to generate pressure here in a little bit. Lance, you hit it on the head a little bit and kind of talked about it, but you're not going to see Vic Fangio blitz a lot because he doesn't need to. It's pretty much that simple. He didn't need to blitz a lot in San Francisco, didn't need to blitz a lot in Chicago. When he has needed to, we've seen him blitz quite a bit. But he just doesn't often need to because he always has those pass rushers that can get the job done and get the pressure without needing to bring in a blitz. Because if you can sit there and you can drop your 7 guys into coverage and only rush for and get a sack, that's freaking fantastic.
That's a huge win for your defense. If you can only rush 4, keep 7 in the secondary, and keep them all back in pass coverage without having to bring an extra guy to create any kind of pressure on a regular basis, your defense is doing great things up front, and that is something that is a big key in the Vic Fangio defense. So, guys, we're going to have to take another quick break here. We're getting kind of long, so just hold tight. We'll be right back. Thanks, guys.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, guys, before we get out of here, we have some quick takes on the Broncos-Raiders season opener. Eric, who you got, man?
I have the Broncos winning the game 27-13. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Shelby Harris versus Rodney Hudson. I don't want to talk about too much because I know building the Broncos guys are going to be going over these player versus player matchups a lot. And I just want to say that Hudson has 8 years of 80-plus grades in pass protection. He's one of the best pass protection centers in the NFL and has been the number 1 rated pass protection center since 2015. He only allowed a total of 5 pressures last year, and I think Domata Peko had 2 of them, and Shelby Harris had 1. So, of the 5, 3 of them came from the Broncos. I may be mistaken and missing my numbers there, but I know 2 or 3 of them came against the Broncos. He has a lot of issues in the run game, though, and that's where you're going to see him exploited a lot. And especially with Shelby Harris, he's improved every single aspect of his game. He's a much better scheme fit in a much better scheme that fits him better than the old scheme does. And he's drastically improved his run defense. He's got 1.5, Rodney Hudson has allowed only 1.5 sacks in his 4 years with the Raiders, whereas Shelby Harris has 7 sacks in 2 years, but only playing 44.1% of the snaps for the Broncos. So I think that they have the pieces on offense and defense, which to be able to exploit the Raiders. I think that the speed that they have on their offensive side of the ball is going to be able to attack those linebackers because they're not overly fast. I think their cornerback depth is a little bit bad. They're a little bit slower. They have a very questionable offensive line, especially at left tackle and right tackle, because there's been some talk about Trent Brown not showing up the best and being a little bit overweight. So I think that the Broncos, they're going to be able to exploit. We're going to really get this offensive scheme and defensive scheme unleashed, and the Broncos are going to be able to walk away with a win 27-13.
Yeah, man, that's good to hear. A really good job with the stuff on Shelby Harris. Those are amazing stats as far as Shelby Harris and Rodney Hudson is concerned. That's very well done. Very good, deep stuff right there. Unfortunately, I don't have any other kind of any other matchups to watch for the Broncos right now because I did do 5 key matchups for the Broncos to win in the game against Oakland. That is up on Mile High Huddle right now. It just got shared on Bleacher Report earlier this weekend. So go ahead and take a look at that. But one thing that I did want to kind of bring up is Raiders tight end Darren Waller in the passing game against guys like Josie Jewell and Steven Alexander specifically. What are we going to see as far as the pass coverage aspect of the Broncos linebackers coming in? A guy that is looking like he's starting to break out as a tight end, converted from wide receiver in college, and is very big and athletic kind of a guy. I also have the Broncos winning, but not quite as handily as you. I have it at 24-17. I really agree with you as far as the Broncos having an edge, especially on their defensive side of the football, especially coming in the pass rush game. We already broke down Vic Fangio's defense and what it means to have 2 big pass rushers in Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, and I do think that one of my biggest matchups, as you kind of alluded to, was Trent Brown versus Von Miller. Trent Brown also had some pretty significant pass rush chops playing in as a New England Patriot last year and in his time as a San Francisco 49er in the past. So Von Miller versus Trent Brown, that's going to be a pretty big matchup to watch as well. Von Miller did call him one of the best offensive tackles. I think he said specifically the best right tackle in all of football in 2017 following a joint practice. So maybe keep your eyes out for some fireworks on that aspect as well. But guys, that's going to do it for us today. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you all once again for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow us both on Twitter if you choose by finding me at Sanderson MHH and for Eric at Erick Trickel, spelled ERICKTRICKEL. Also be sure to follow Mile High Huddle at Mile High Huddle for instant updates on your Denver Broncos. Chad does a really good job getting everything that we have out there as far as written content. Obviously, we're getting some stuff shared out on Bleacher Report as well. As also the podcasts are getting some run on the Huddle Up Pod if you follow at Huddle Up Pod as well. So you can also follow the Mile High Huddle's Facebook page as well. We love and appreciate all of your guys' support, and if not for you all, we wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to do what we do the best, which is break down the Denver Broncos for you guys. So until next time, Broncos country, you guys stay safe, take care, and have a great day.